Our agenda is to discuss three things. Mainly three things. Introduction to NLP, and on the basis of that, we will be looking at a project which is sentimental analysis. And after that, decision trees, random forest. So yeah, that is all for today. We will be discussing. So let's begin with intro to NLP first. So what is NLP? See, if in technical manner we try to understand, it is a subfield of linguistics, that is understanding the language, computer science and artificial intelligence, which is concerned with interactions between computers and human language. In particular, how to program computers to process and analyze large number of natural language data. What is natural language? So you have understood about programming language, you have understood about assembly, you might have heard about assembly language. So those are languages which we deal with the computers. But how do we deal when we are talking about artificial intelligence, when we are talking about applying things in real world? So we see that we talk with each other in natural languages like English, like Hindi, like various other languages in the world, right? So there has been this curiosity among the computer science people and statistical knowledge people that how in a much better way can we use computers to understand what we speak, to solve problems as a human does, right? As a human being, we try to solve problems with languages, right? We understand each other problems in natural language, and we understand what we try to convey those things. There are so many tasks associated with natural language processing which needs to, which for which there was always a need to be solved using computers and using technology. So earlier there were statistical ways to do it, but with the advent of machine learning and deep learning, now it is reaching new heights. Right? You can see that if you are aware of things in the recent times, you must have heard about BERT. Right? There is this algorithm BERT by which most of the recent models and problems have been solved. Then there is this GPT-3, million parameter model, million parameters based model, which can actually do anything with NLP. It can. There are examples like if you give something in natural language, like I want uh, first three rows from the table, from this table in this database, then it will create a SQL query. You can write code with it. You can just give. I mean, those are some exaggerations, and it involves more of uh, more of training as well, for particular fine tuning as well to the model. But yeah, those things are now within reach due to the advent of deep learning and machine learning in NLP. So now it is reaching new heights. Every day we are seeing new research in NLP, in natural language processing. So it involves speech recognition, right? So whatever speech recognition you see nowadays, be it in Google's or Alexa or all of that, that is due to natural language processing. So that involves text to speech conversion, speech to text conversion, and all of that. Uh, did someone say something? Okay, where are we? Yeah. So text to speech conversion, natural language understanding, natural language generation, all of that is involved under this. So, but there are slight differences also. I mean, that is just the differences in terminology. But yeah. Next, we move to the NLP versus NLU versus NLG. So that is just based on the terminology. So NLP, that is natural language processing, involves part of speech tagging. So that we do like grammatical understanding, right? So like there is a sentence uh, that we are learning data science course in nation innovation, right? So here we can see that we is a pronoun, right? Nation innovation is a noun, and data science is a noun. So that is part of speech tagging, right? Then syntactic parsing. This involves understanding the dependencies, right? What word is dependent upon what. Then named entity recognition. So named entity recognition involves identifying the names. Like America is a great place to live. If we see something like that, then America is a name, so that will be tagged as a named entity. Then text categorization. It is somewhat related to text classification only. Then co-reference resolution. Like if there are two references to a particular piece of text, then that is there. Machine translation, which is being used widely. Whatever you see in Google Translate, that is possible due to NLP and due to the researches in machine translation, neural machine translation to be more specific. Then in the NLU part comes the natural language understanding, right? So that is mostly related with chatbot development and dialogues which we create. So now every website has its own chatbot, right? You see, every website tries to, because it is now a part of user interface. If you don't, so every website is having a chatbot. There are chatbots linked with WhatsApp, linked with Teams, linked with whatever businesses try to communicate, because it feels more human to us to communicate with a chatbot. So that is like a very important part of businesses these days, as a user interface also. So there we use NLU, that is natural language understanding. So there comes sentimental analysis, dialogue agents, semantic parsing, relation extraction, summarization, question answering. All of that comes in natural language understanding. Then apart from that, we have automatic speech recognition, right? So like I am speaking, there is a system which recognizes it what I am speaking, right? So that is there. Then text to speech is also there. Like if I write something, it should be converted to a speech. So that is also there. So yeah, these are some interrelated fields. Then the most recent one is natural language generation, right? There is always these like we want that, okay, what would be it like if the computer itself can generate the natural language? It can generate the whole stories, it can generate poems, it can generate can the like we try to be creative with it, right? So there are various models if you try to research, one of which is GPT, CTRL, and all of those transformer based models with which we are trying to generate natural language. And now we are moving to a more generalist approach, like which can solve all these problems with with just one model, right? So that is part of it. Then yeah, where there are various tasks and applications associated with NLP, and this is not an exhaustive list. Like it is like we have a lot of tasks, fine grained tasks, and various generalist tasks as well, which needs to be solved with NLP, and with which there are various, I mean, extremely various use cases. So let me tell you that apart from classical ML, because classical ML is always there, right? Classification, regression, clustering, that is always there, which finds its use case in the business side. But apart from that, the one thing which I am seeing very common nowadays and which is being very widely used and exploited in the industry is NLP. So if you are familiar with NLP, if you know details of NLP and you know how to do projects in NLP, then that would be an extremely useful thing for you to crack interviews and to get jobs which are like I would say dream jobs for a AI enthusiast or computer science or data science enthusiast, right? So there are various tasks and applications associated with NLP, like text classification, sentimental analysis. By sentimental analysis, we try to find sentiment for a given piece of text. It can be a sentence, it can be a review, it can be anything, right? So that is there. Then machine translation we have seen. Then spelling correction, POS tagging, dependency parsing, name entity recognition, chunking, that is a grammatical thing like noun phrase extraction, yeah, somewhat like that. Then reading comprehension, like suppose as we tried to do in our earlier classes like 10th or 12th in English, we have that find like comprehend this text. There is a passage, you need to comprehend it, and on the basis of that answer few questions, something like that, right? There are, so that tasks also we try to automate and do with these artificial intelligent models which are based on NLP only. Then textual entailment, that is contradiction, whether two things are contradicting or neutral, or there is an entailment, one leads from the other, right? Then dialogue management is there, chatbots, which is a part of NLU. Then natural language generation involves AI text generators. Yeah. Then question answering systems are there. Text classification is there, right? Which is classification only, but but we are doing it on text data. And yeah, I think I have repeated a few. Okay. Then language modeling is there. So we try to create a complete probabilistic model of um, of the whole language with a very vast amount of data. So GPT is one of that example. BERT is one of that example, which is actually a language model. So that is there. So by language model, we are trying to achieve all these tasks in a general manner, right? So dialogue management can be done with the language model. Next sentence prediction can be done. All of that can be done using, if we try to develop a language model which is generalist enough, right? Then predicting missing word in a sentence. So all of these are tasks in NLP. So now comes the practical aspects. That is when you are dealing with an NLP data, that is a natural language data. What all you need to keep in mind. So first of all, pre-processing, right? So why pre-processing is important? Because the computer or whatever your algorithm you are using does not understand text. All it understands are numbers, are numerical things. So even in tabular data, we have seen that if there is something categorical, then we need to encode it into numerical variables, right? By using one hot encoder or label encoding, right? So there also, here also we need to do some pre-processing, which involves stemming. So by stemming, we mean that if there is a text like goes, so goes, s will be removed or es will be removed. It is somewhat yeah, like that. So Porter stammer is one of those stemming algorithms. Then lemmatization comes. So lemmatization tries to go to the root word of a particular term. For example, there is going, there is goes, there is uh, gone, right? So it will try to go to the root term, grammatically root term of the particular word. See, because these approaches, NLP approaches, are based on frequencies. So if goes, gone, and going, all these three are considered as different terms, then it might be problematic or biased for our model. Yeah, right? The model will not be showing correct representation of our data and will not perform well. So we need to do stemming and lemmatization. So by stemming, we mean that certain letters are removed and due to which the word also loses its meaning. But lemmatization is a much better approach in which we try to go to the grammatically root word of a particular term. Then stop words need to be removed. So by stop words, you mean like to, if, so all those to, on, it, those prepositions, at, in, the, of. So these are some list of stop words which are defined in all those libraries which are there in NLP, like NLTK, Spacey, right? So there we have these stop words defined. So these stop words need to be removed from the data set. Then punctuations need to be removed because those punctuations has no meaning, right, in the data analysis. Then special characters like at the rate or some special characters are there. We need to remove them. Then lowercase all text, right? Because if there is something in caps, there is something in small, there is something in mixed, and all these three terms are considered as different, then it won't be giving the correct frequency. By frequency, I mean number of times a particular term occurs. So then we need to treat all of them as the same term. So we need to put all of those as lowercase. So that is the part of pre-processing. We do other pre-processing steps as well, but that depends on the task you are choosing, right? Then embeddings, representations. So as we know that the computer does not understand the natural language if you just pass it. The algorithm does not understand it. Algorithm is based on numerical things only. So to convert these text data into, so you need to convert these text data into some features, right? Like the features we have in other tabular tasks, right? In classification, regression. Similarly, we need to have features for the text data as well. So each, suppose there is a text line. Suppose you have a data set of reviews, like online Amazon reviews. So you need to do some analysis on it. You need to find whether those reviews are positive or negative. Some sentimental analysis you need to do. So you need to do. So what you will do, you will try to convert. First of all, you will convert. So what you will do, you will first pre-process those sentences, right? You will do stemming or lemmatization. You will remove stop words, punctuation, so special characters, lowercase, all text, all of that. Once you are done with that, then you will have clean text with you. Then you need to convert that clean text into some numerical features. So for that we have approaches, right? So we have two approaches broadly. Frequency based. So frequency based approach is involved bag of words and TF-IDF. We will see that in detail. Then we have prediction based approach. Basically, these are deep learning based models. Word2Vec, which involves SIBO, that is continuous bag of words, and skipgram. And then there is glove and BERT. BERT is a transformer based model. So yeah, we will see these in a bit. So let's go to the code now, and there itself we will see all the practical aspects. I hope till now the conceptual part is clear. Hope you have got an idea of what is NLP, what is NLU, what is NLG, how it finds its application in the current data science scenario, right? So if you have any doubt, you can discuss, you can ask, or else we are good to go with sentimental analysis. So this is one of the like widely popular projects. Okay then. Here only we will see all these practical aspects, right? So this is a project in which we are trying to do sentimental analysis on the Twitter dataset. So by sentimental analysis, we mean we are trying to predict or classify whether a particular text, whether a particular tweet is positive or negative or neutral also. Let me see, is neutral a class here? So neutral is not a class here, we just have positive or negative, right? So let's look at it now. So the data set is in CSV format, right? Each line is a data record. You can see that here we are having these tweets, and yeah, each line is and there is this label. So by label, if it is a 0, then it implies that it is a positive sentiment. If it is 1, then it implies that it is a negative sentiment, right? Then we are importing the necessary packages. RE is one of the widely used packages, like for regex. Regex we use to extract and do various things. Regex is itself a whole lecture which needs 2 hours. So regex, by regex we try to do all this. Let me say it, like all this cutting and extracting text or formatting and manipulating text. Those we try to do with regex. Then pandas, we are doing all those pandas, numpy, matplotlib, seaborn, string, NLTK. NLTK is widely popular natural language processing library, which you need to like have an understanding of. SpaCy is also one of those libraries. So all this we are trying to import. Then we have this train data set, which has 31,962 rows with 3 columns. These 3 columns include ID, label, and tweet. So then we have test. Similarly, we have test data set which has 17,197 rows, right? So this already the data set we have involves train and test. Then we combine the train and test together to do the similar pre-processing in both, right? So we have combined them vertically. Then once we combine them, then we do the pre-processing. We are trying to, so as I've said that it depends upon the problem whatever pre-processing you do. So here we are doing the we are trying to remove add the rate user from it using functions in the defined in the regex. So using some pattern we will find that pattern in text, and on the basis of that we will do some pre-processing. So here what we are doing is we are trying to remove add the rate user, because in tweets we see add the rate user very times, right? So that is removed from the text, so that we have clean text, right? From the then we remove punctuations also, right? Str dot replace, we are replacing all these punctuations which involve a to, right? Everything except a to z or capital A to z we are removing. So then we have tidy tweets, you can see those are removed. Then removing short words here, because it is concerning that considering that less than three, I mean more three or three less than three letters don't have any importance here. That is just an assumption. So we make various assumptions with our data set, trying to make our model more appropriate. It does not mean that you need to remove short words uh, in every like NLP problem. Here we are removing just for the sake of it. Then tokenization is a very important part of pre-processing, in which we try to convert all these sentences into few tokens. So by token, each token is a word, right? So when father, so here we have when father dysfunctional, selfish, drags kids. When a father is dysfunctional and is selfish, so that we removed these in and is all of that, and we got these tidy tweets. Then from that we have tokenized them, right? We have created this list of words tokens. Then on that we will be stemming. So stemming is a rule based process of stripping the suffixes. So ing, ly, es, all of that are removed. So here we are using NLTK's Porter stemmer. So there are various other stemming algorithms as well. So Porter stemmer will try to, so that, as you can see that there was dysfunctional which have been converted to defunct. But this is also you can say weakness of stemming, that it just rule on the basis of rules, it removes ing, ly, es, ion, al, right, like all those suffixes. So in that way it changes the meaning, or it loses the meaning of the term as well, right? So for example, here we can see cause, and we have this rule that E should be removed. Now we have just CAUS, which does not have any meaning. So that might be problematic in a few cases. So for that we have lemmatization. So but once we have done stemming, then we stitch those together, right? We again convert that into a text. So yeah. So by
This is called lemmatization.
no,
When we stitch.
yeah, when no, when we remove the ing suffixes, all of that, this is called stemming. By lemmatization, what it will do now, it will, instead of doing it in a rule based manner, it will have some meaning. Every word you will get here will have some meaning. So dysfunctional, I don't think would be converted to defunct, right? Cause will not be converted to CAUS. This will not be done there, because there we will be having some meaning for all the words we get. So I find that approach a much better approach while dealing with natural language data set.
So
There,
like stemming and lemmatization will come together, or like lemmatization we will focus more
yeah,
instead of stemming.
nowadays lemmatization is being focused more, because
Okay.
there we are getting more meaningful words, right? Stemming has this weakness that, but people use both as well. Sometimes they try to include both. So that
Okay.
depends upon the particular problem or approach you are trying to choose, right? So yeah,
Okay.
but I find personally I find lemmatization much better as compared to stemming. Uh,
Okay.
because in stemming we see that words lose their value or meaning. Then we have stitched them together, converted them into text again, because we will be now converting that uh, into features, right? So before that, we are doing some visualization. So the most popular visualization we do with NLP is word cloud, right? So word cloud is something like this. So those words which have higher frequency, like those words which come most of the time, are large enlarged, and those which we see lesser, like those words which have less frequency, are small. So that way, here what it has done is all those words which are positive are put here, right? All those positive words we have taken together and done the word cloud visualization on it. So word cloud visualization is simply just a library. From word cloud we have imported this, and by a few line of codes we can generate these word clouds, right? So we can see that love is the mostly used positive word, then life, weight. You can see that there is thi, which does not have any meaning. And why is it? Because we have used stemming. So stemming removes. So similarly, beautiful. So by stemming, ful might have removed. So we have just beauti, right? So people, e has been removed due to stemming. So that is what we see here, right? Similarly, amazing. Amazing should have been converted to amaze, right? That is a part of lemmatization. In lemmatization, we will see that okay, amazing has been converted to amaze. That is the root format. But here, amazing ing have been removed completely, and we just have amaz, which has no meaning as of it. So yeah, that might be problematic. That might not be problematic, because what we are trying to do is just letting our model have some numbers so that it understands the text in a much better manner.
Sir,
Mhm.
I want to ask one thing. Sir, here in this word cloud, like the size, for example, love is like of a greater size. So it means that there is a greater number of frequency love has
Yeah,
occurred in the
yeah,
sentences.
yeah.
Is
That
that
is
so?
what it
Okay.
means. That is what it means. Love has been most used in all these texts. That is what it means. Okay. Then similarly, we are doing for negative words. So the most negatively used, in those negative texts, the words which are used are Trump, black, racist, right? Hate, and all of those words like libtard. So those are used in negative connotations. So now we are here because tweets have an importance with hashtags also. So here hashtags are also being used. That is not mandatory actually, but yeah, you can use that. Now, as a part of visualization, bar plots also come into picture. So we can see that we are here plotting the bar plots. Then which don't make much significance here. Word cloud itself is fine, but we can have plots like uh, what hashtags are being mostly used. So hashtag love is being mostly used. Then the posit CIVE is removed and we just has posit. Similarly, smile, healthy, thank, all these positive words. We have all these positive hashtags we have arranged here and tried to look how many times those have been used. Just a bar plot of those. Then for negative tweets, similarly we are doing that. Trump is the most in all the negative tweets. Trump is the most negative. Then politics related tweets are there, right, in the negative connotation. So now we are coming to extracting features from the clean tweets, right? Till now we have cleaned the text data, and now we need to extract features from it so that our model understands that we are now going to convert them into numerical features. So this is the most important part from the technical perspective. Please, yeah, focus here now. So bag of words features, which is a very simple and mostly used, the most naive approach to convert the data into numerical features. So for example, it creates the vocabulary for all the unique words occurring in all the documents. So this is in a technical manner. Let me just tell you these, help you understand these technical terms. So corpus implies the collection of text, right? So here all of those tweets we have, if we collect them, like that collection is known as collect corpus, right? Then there are D documents. So each text, I mean each tweet can be considered as a document here, right? So there, if there are n unique tokens, by token we mean words, right? So n unique tokens, right? So if you collect all that corpus and just have the unique tokens from it, so those are considered as unique n unique tokens, right? So suppose there are 1,000 unique tokens, then n will be 1,000. So n tokens will form a list, and the size of bag of words matrix M. So suppose you have these, suppose, so here for example you have these tweets, right? 31,000 tweets, and you need to convert those into features. So if you have 1,000, or let's say 100 unique words in your data set, then your matrix will be somewhat like 31,000 times 100. That is, there will be 31,000 rows and 100 features. So we will understand what those features imply here. So what will happen is, the feature length will be your total number of unique terms, right? N. So in that n, how we are giving that particular value? So suppose this is a sentence, this is a document, this is a tweet. Let's say he is a lazy boy, she is also lazy, right? This is one tweet. We are trying to convert into a bag of words representation, but before that, um, this is the corpus here. Let's say D1 and D2. So here the unique words are he, she, lazy, boy, Smith, person, right? In our whole data set, these are the unique terms. So from these, we get to know that, okay, our n is 6, that is the number of unique terms are 6, so our length of the vector, our feature vector would be 6 only. There will be 6 features, right? So each feature, zeroth term, first term, second term, third term, would represent a word's occurrence, right? How many times that particular word occurs. So in the zeroth index, we see that in the D1, how many times he occurs. So that is 1. How many times she occurs, that is also 1. How many times lazy occurs, that is 2. Similarly for boy, Smith and person. So this way we will get this vector, right? 1, 1, 2, 1, 0, 0. Similarly for D2, we will have these occurrences. So this representation, what we have here, is known as bag of words representation, right? So if there are 10 data, 10 D1, D2, D3 up to Dn, and there are like 6 of these unique words, then 10 by 6 would be our whole matrix, which we will be using for our training or training data set, right? So that is there. Uh, Yeah, so that is how we convert the text data into numerical features. I hope till now we are clear with it, because this is the foundation. If you are confused here, have some doubt, then please discuss. Now we are moving with more further approaches. So do you have any doubt till now?
No, sir, no doubt.
Great. Okay. So now we are moving with the yeah. So how do we do it in coding? We do it using count vectorizer, right? So count vectorizer is a library in sklearn.featureextraction.txt, module in sklearn.featureextraction.txt. So here these are various parameters which you can tune. So maximum document frequency is 0.9. So document frequency, we mean that it will include only those words which occur in these many documents, right? 90% of documents should be there, or minimum 2 documents, minimum 2, that word should be present in minimum 2 words, then we will consider that. Maximum feature should not be more than 1,000. Stop words also we are trying to implementing here only English, right? So that is part of it, bag of words vectorizer. Here we can see that we have converted those tweets into these bag of words representation with 1,000 features, right? So you can see that this is quite a sparse representation. You can see that most of the terms are 0 only. So here from these thousands you can do some dimensionality reduction like PCA or SVD, so as to make it more, I mean, less sparse and more dense. But that is just part of pre-processing only. So yeah, then it is converted to dense and then we would be using that here also. So that is not a problem. So till now we have these 49,000. So for the total train plus test data set, we have this 49,159 rows with 1,000 columns, that is 1,000 features. So this we have done with bag of words. You can simply apply the algorithm on it by taking these as the training, that is the feature variables, and the last variable would be the target variable, which we will adding, that is the label, right, 0 or 1, for the positive or negative tweet. So this we have done using bag of words representation, also known as count vectorizer, because we are here taking the count only. Then comes the TF-IDF features. This is the most used and most asked uh, question in the interviews also, NLP interviews, ML interviews, whatever you give, you will always face this question that what do you mean by TF-IDF vectorization. These are vectorization approaches. You can say these are vectorization approaches, these are embeddings also, these are known as, also you can say these are feature extraction approaches. So these are just some terminologies, right? So TF-IDF stands for term frequency inverse document frequency, right? TF stands for term frequency, IDF stands for inverse document frequency. So it is most used in topic modeling. So topic modeling is also one of the tasks in NLP, where we try to identify the topics in a particular corpus. We try to find what document corresponds to what topic, right? So a document, suppose you have 1,000 articles, you want to identify what article corresponds to what topic. It might correspond to sports, it might correspond to politics, it might, so that way if you are going to look, the topic modeling plays a vital role there, and there TF-IDF was used the most. But nowadays TF-IDF is being, I mean, TF-IDF is like the most like first. So if you have a data set, the very first two approaches you will use to vectorize the natural language data set would be would be term frequency or count vectorizer, that is the bag of words representation, and the second one would be TF-IDF. So TF-IDF is the most used representation. So what here? So this is a statistical measure which represents how important a word is to a document, right? So how much a word is important to a document, that is represented by the value of TF-IDF, right? So the importance increases proportionally to the number of times a word appears in the document, and that is because of the formula. You can see that TF-IDF is equal to number of times a term appears in the document, that is the term frequency of the term, and divided by the total number of total number of I will tell you. Let me show you the formula. So here we have term frequency, which is nothing but the count of the term, number of occurrences of the term in the document, right? So in the particular document, like here we are considering a document as a tweet, right? So for the particular document, for the particular tweet, for the particular sentence, how many times a particular term occurs, that is defined as its term frequency. Then log into log, here n is the number of terms in the corpus, number of documents in the corpus, sorry, that is the number of documents in the corpus. So total number of documents in our case, we have in the total data set, we have like some 40,000 terms, I mean 40,000 documents, right? 40,000 tweets. So n will be 40,000. Then DF, document frequency, that is number of documents containing that term. So here you don't need to confuse. I'll explain how. So for term frequency, when I'm talking about term frequency, suppose there is this term machine learning, right? So let's say just data is a term, right? So you have, suppose 10 documents, you have a corpus of 10 documents, and in those 10 documents, for each document you are trying to find this value, right? for each document, for each word you are trying to find this value. Let me show you how TF-IDF matrix looks like. So this is how it looks like. So suppose second term corresponds to the term data, right? And these correspond to the various tweets you have. So second term corresponds to the term data. So for the term data, this value will represent TF multiplied by IDF. So here TF implies how many times the term data has occurred in this particular tweet, in this particular document. So that will be the value of TF, that will be the value of term frequency. Then how many times document frequency will be how many documents contain the term data, right? How many documents contain the term data, right? Second term corresponds to the term data, and how many times, how many documents among these 41,000 documents, how many documents contain this term data would be its document frequency. Then we would put this in this formula, term frequency and document frequency, and n is the number of documents we have, that is here number of tweets we have. Then we will get this value Wij, and that will be the value, that will be the value for this particular position here, right, for this particular index here. So that is how we calculate TF-IDF. There is a very important question which is always asked in an interview you go for data science, and that is why do we have like document frequency inverse here, right? So why do we have inverse of document frequency here? So that is because more larger the number of times a word occurs in various documents, the less important it becomes to the less unique it becomes to a particular document. So it becomes less important then. So then the value decreases. So we say that Wij is inversely proportional to the document frequency and directly proportional to the term frequency, right? So here we see that is composed by two terms. So importance increases proportionally to the number of terms a word appears in a document and is offset by the frequency of word in the corpus. So TF-IDF weight is composed by two terms. The first computes the normalized term frequency, that is the term frequency, number of terms, right? So it is not just the count, we also divide it by the total number of terms to normalize the term, right? So TF-IDF is not only the count but also divided by the frequency divided by the total number of terms, that is TF. So TF is the normalized term frequency, number of times word appears in the document divided by the total number of words in that document. Then second term is the inverse document frequency, which is computed as the logarithm of number of documents in the corpus divided by the total number of documents where the specific term occurs, right? So when we multiply these two terms, TF multiplied by IDF, then we get for that particular term we get that particular value. So here is an example. Consider a document containing 100 words wherein the word cat appears 3 times, right? So for a particular document, like for a particular row, we see that there are 100 words, that is the length of the vector will be 100. Word cat appears 3 times. So for the index corresponding to the word cat, we will have the term frequency, that is 3 divided by 100, 0.003. Now there are 10 million documents and word cat appears in 1000 of these. So the document frequency, so the inverse document frequency will be logarithm of total number of documents, that is 10 million divided by number of documents with term in it. So number of documents with term in it is like we have just seen, number of documents with term is 1000, right? 1000, there are 1000 documents in which the word cat occurs. So that value will be 4. So the TF-IDF weight is the product of these quantities, TF, which we just got 0.03, multiplied by IDF, which is 4. So then we get 0.12, which is the TF-IDF value. So this is how we can get the TF-IDF, and in coding we do that by using this TF-IDF vectorizer library, which have these parameters which you can tune to get much better results. So maximum DF implies how many documents, what percentage of documents should the word be in to consider that particular word, right? Minimum DF represents minimum number of documents, maximum features, like how many features would be there. Then on the tidy tweets, that is the clean data, we are trying to fit transform this TF-IDF matrix, and then we get this data frame, right? So once you have that, then you can apply the machine learning models. So we are applying on both bag of words and TF-IDF to see the uh, like the results, right? So this we have pre-processing. We always do on train and test both. Always remember that pre-processing we always do on train and test both. Similar type of pre-processing. Then the training we do on training and test we do on test. Then all the evaluation is similar as that of machine learning. Then train bag of words, we have these bag of words, and similarly we have TF-IDF matrix. So for train we have extracted that. Then on that, yeah, on that we are doing train test split, right? On the train bag of words itself we are doing train test split, and we will have train bag of words, x valid. Here we are using validation dataset also. Test dataset we are not even showing to the training algorithm, right? So that is there. Similarly, we are doing for TF-IDF features. Then we are using, because it is a classification problem, right? You might have guessed till now that there are two classes, 0 and 1, and on the basis of once we have these features extracted from it, it is not different from any classification problem we have seen till now. So for classification, it is binary classification problem, to be more specific. There are negative and positive bits. So we are using logistic regression, which is used in binary classification. Solver is LBFGS. Random state 0. We are just using this basic model. Similarly, for bag of words representation also we are using logistic regression only. Right. So this then we have predicted on the test dataset. I mean the validation dataset. Then on the, then we do F1 score, because it is a classification problem. So we can see that the predicted value is 0.57, which is not quite high. I mean, we should, the F1 score is not quite high, and that is because, I will come to that, why it is not that high. I will come to that. So then TF-IDF, similarly we are doing for TF-IDF features, that is 0.58. Then there is also another approach which is boosting. It is an ensemble based approach, which is mostly used XBoost nowadays. If we try to explain it in simple terms, then boosting basically implies learning from the errors. We try to learn from the errors and improve upon our models incrementally. So that is somewhat boosting. Boosting itself requires at least 1 hour class, which is beyond our scope as of now. Then, we can use that XGBoost classifier. And here also we see that the accuracy is not going above 0.57. So, we see that this is some sort of upper, upper limit we have reached. So then decision tree can also be used. We will be learning decision tree today only. So 0.51 not going above that. TF-IDF also 0.54 not going above that. So model comparison we are doing. Right. So as I've just told in the explaining the project, that in the project also you can have model comparisons. So that you can do using line plot or bar plot, whatever you wish, or whatever. So here we have these F1 scores, right? So 0.57, 0.57120, and once you plot this point plot or line plot, then you see that maximum we get from logistic regression using TF-IDF approach, right? So that we see from this graph. So then it becomes self-explanatory. So using the best possible model to predict the test data. So once we find out that okay, this is the best possible model, then we will be using that to predict on test dataset, and then we get the results. So here we are seeing that okay, the approach is, I mean, we should have got something like 0.7 or 0.8, but we are getting 0.51 only. Why is that so? So that is because the labels we have are not that much balanced, right? So these algorithms work well when the data set is balanced. When it is not balanced, then it creates problems. So we can see that for negative, we have a high number of, like, I think 90% of data is negative only, and we have very less positive bits. That is why we have that we have less accuracy. But if you try to calculate accuracy metric, then that will be high only, because we have discussed earlier also that accuracy metric does not represent rightly the evaluate. It does not evaluate rightly the accuracy of a model. So we use F1 score, and that is why F1 score is low, because it represents it in a much balanced manner, right? Then, yeah, there could be approaches like you could have used Smoot to generate fake negative examples, and that might have worked, right, using some oversampling technique. So the summary till now is that we have done pre-processing, then we have done data visualization, then embeddings. We have these two word embeddings. Then uh, these machine learning models we have used, and we have used this evaluation matrix. So this is the total sentimental analysis project.
Sir,
Yeah.
sir, are there only two ways to like do two types of model like BOG or TF-IDF? Are there other
Yeah.
methods?
There are other also. So that involves deep learning based models. I mean, you can just simply download those models and use them as a dictionary, right? As a map. So once you, like, those maps have something like this. Let me just write it down. So that is something like this. So inside those maps, they have already created those embeddings, right? So for each word, like suppose dog, there will be some value, right? Mm, right. Similarly, for cat, there will be some value. So you can use those values directly from those models, right? So that representation also you can do. Instead of TF-IDF, what you can do is uh, for each word calculate, I mean extract these values and then put that as a matrix, right? So that you can do from word to vec, you can do that. There is also glove. We can't go into the details of these algorithms because that would require deep learning understanding as well, right? And yeah, you can use glove, you can use BERT also. BERT is like the most used in every NLP algorithm. Every NLP interview you go, BERT will be the most asked as of now, because it is quite popular nowadays. Yeah.
So regarding the accuracy, we say like regarding for like if we compare machine learning and deep learning in
Mhm.
this like BOG and TF-IDF, it is like machine learning algorithms, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah,
And the other one like Word2Vec and Skipgram, something like that. These are deep learning. So which is better? Like if we
yeah.
compare both
So,
of them.
so that is a question. Good question. See, uh, so these things you can't just say that these are machine learning algorithms. I mean, it is not an algorithm. It is just a way to convert that feature vector. I mean that text you have into a feature vector.
Mm,
So that is a
mhm.
statistic based approach. You can say that that is a statistical method, right? Machine learning in its core is statistics only, by the way. So
Okay.
yeah,
Mhm.
but when we talk about deep learning based approach, so there we have, why I'm saying it is a deep learning based model, uh, because these values, right? I just showed you that okay, they have stored
Mhm.
these dictionaries there in the model. You don't need to train the whole model and do all that. You will get these values from already trained models, right? So they have
Mm,
trained these models in a very vast data set, right? Like millions of documents or
mm,
GBs of data from Wikipedia or like from the whole web. They have
mm,
taken that data, and on that they have trained these one layer, two layer models, deep learning models, uh, and and from that they have learned these weights, right? These values. So they have proven it statistically, and using those papers, there are papers for all these algorithms. They have proven it that okay, these represent in much better way a particular word, right? Like you will see that for word2vec, if I may tell that intuitively, let me show you that. Intuitively, if you see, word2vec represents these relationships in a much better manner, right? So you will see that uh, semantic relationship is being captured in much better manner. So word2vec, here you can see, let me show you a few graphs which are intuitive enough. We won't go into the deep learning part of it because that would be problematic. Yeah, so you can see that. Yeah, so here if you try to calculate the cosine similarity, we have seen similarity like there are various similarity metrics like Euclidean distance you can calculate, right? But here in text data in word2vec embeddings we calculate these, what do we know them, cosine similarity. So cosine similarity, if you have seen in mathematics classes or whatever engineering classes you might be doing, you might have gone through it. So it represents that what between two vectors, what is the direction. If the direction is similar, the cosine similarity will be the same, right? It is the dot product divided by the mod. So that is the cos theta angle between them. So cosine similarity between woman and queen would be the, so between similar objects you will be having similar similarity. So big and biggest would be the similar, having the similar sort of embedding, similar sort of values, right? Small and smallest will be have the similar. So why is that we are here seeing that okay, we have captured the syntactic relationship here. Similarly, we have kept women and man would be having some similar analogy. So analogous semantic relationship is also being captured here. And another fun fact, let me tell you, is that this works so beautifully. This works so beautifully that let me show you that there is this, that if you do king, queen, man, woman, then you will see that yeah, you will see that queen is almost equal to king minus man plus woman, right? So how beautiful is that? That you have represented it in such a nice manner that you have, these are what, these are vectors only. These are vectors in, suppose if there are 100 dimensions to it, 100 features to it, then you are seeing that particular feature in a 100 dimensional space, right? So if this is a vector W woman, sorry, W man, this is a vector W woman, this is a vector W queen, this is a vector W king. So you will see that from vector algebra, you will see that W queen is almost equal to W king minus W man plus W woman. So you will see that this captures very beautifully the semantic and syntactical understanding between uh, the variables. So it is quite widely used. Word2vec is quite widely used, right? You can just download a model and use that without doing any further training and all, right? So that is word2vec. Then there is glove also. Glove is some global based approach. Yeah, it is less popularly used as compared to word2vec, but you can experiment with that. Then there is BERT. It is an attention mechanism based approach. It is a whole model. Like yeah, it will take like yeah. So there is a paper for it also. It has come like 1 or 2 years, 2 years back. I think it has come. Yeah. So that is also widely used. BERT is also widely used to get those embeddings, and BERT is also quite successful in getting the uh, in getting these semantic similarities and all. But BERT has its own qualities, right? But can like differentiate between uh, this we know as what do we know this as? This we know as semantic disambiguation, word disambiguation, you can say that. So here we went to the river bank. I need to go to the bank to make a deposit. So word is same, but for this bank uh, the representation would be different, and for this bank the representation would be different, because the context comes into the play there, right? So that is more beautifully and more nicely achieved with BERT, right? So that is just an
Okay, sir.
intuitive understanding. We can't go into the deep learning detail of that. So now we are done with introduction to NLP. We are done with total sentimental analysis. We have enough time now. If you have any doubt in these two topics, you can ask. Otherwise, we will be proceeding with decision trees, which is also one of the important topics in classical ML. So, if you have any doubts, we can proceed. We can discuss, or else I'll be proceeding with decision trees. Okay, then let's proceed with decision trees. So, be here with me and have your focus here, because after classification, regression, decision trees is one of the most important topics which is widely asked, and a candidate's understanding of ML classical algorithms is being tested using these algorithms. So it is also one of the supervised learning algorithms, because here labels are required, right? So let's go with it now. So here is an example decision tree, right? So here you can see that for a uh, particular particular data set, you have these features, right? Age, student, credit rating, and these are the target variables. No, yes, no, yes, right? So I think this is a data set corresponding to whether you should give a loan to a particular person or not, right? So that is the classification problem, binary classification problem, yes or no. So for this particular problem, we have a data set which have these variables, right? Age, student, credit rating, and these are the target variables. So how does decision tree solve these problems? What it tries to build is a tree, right? So it will try to build this tree. So it will keep these. So how this tree will work, we will see that. So suppose we have a test example, right? We have a test example with, so leaf nodes are the class predictions. Let me see if I have that test example here. Yeah, we have that. Okay, no problem. So how does this work? So this works like this. So how does this work? Suppose you have this test data, right? So we are trying to predict whether this person has cheated or not, something like that, right? So refund, no, let me see. Yeah, no or yes we are trying to predict, right? No or yes we are trying to predict on the basis of these features, and yeah, on the basis of these features we are trying to predict no or yes. It is somewhat related to loan prediction only, you can consider that. So how does it work? If you have, suppose you have trained the data and you have got this decision tree, so how does it internally work? How does it tests? How does it predicts on that test data? So you have this test data where refund is no, marital status is married, taxable income is 80K, and cheat is you don't know that value. That is any, that is not available. Refund you want to predict that whether you should refund or no. No. You want to predict the loan. You want to predict that whether you should give that loan or not. So how does that work? You will start from the root of the tree. You will check what is the value for refund. So refund is no. So it will not go to the right. It will not go to the left side. It will go to the right side of the tree. No. Right. Then marital status is married. It will check for marital status. It is married. Then it will go to the right side, which is married. And then after it will get no. So the loan will not be given. Right. Assigns it to no. So that is somewhat how it tests that. I hope you have got an intuition of it, because that is my goal here. First, you should get an intuition for the particular algorithm, and then you should go into the technical and mathematical details of that. If you have any doubt, I can again explain it. So here also you have these features: age, student, credit rating. On the basis of that, you are trying to predict whether that loan should be given or not to the person, to the here, right? So once you have trained the data, you got this decision tree, right? So we train the data, we train on the data to get this decision tree, right? So once you have trained on the data, you get this decision tree, and then on the basis of that, if the age is, if the, so first of all, you check on the attribute age. If it is middle aged, you will directly assign to yes. If it is a student, then if the student is youth, that is young, then you will give that or no. If it is not youth, if it is not a student, then you will not give. So that's how it does. In technical terms, these are the various algorithms. You will be seeing ID3, C4.5, Sprint, and CART. These are the example algorithms. So these algorithms differ from each other on the basis of like small things like what is the impurity metric we are using, and things like that. We'll see that in detail. Then leaf nodes are the predictions, and intermediate nodes are the attribute value tests, right? So these are the attribute values that are the features, and these are their values in the path. If the age is youth, middle aged, or senior, if the credit rating is fair and excellent. So edges are the attribute value. So decision tree schematic. So this is the training data set. We divide that on the basis of some attributes, and impure node select. So if there is an impure node, by impure node what we mean, we will see that we select best attribute and continue, and for pure node we just give the leaf node class. So that is how it works. Now we will go to how to build decision trees, right? So decision trees are built on the basis of greedy strategy. So greedy algorithms is one of the concepts in data structures and algorithm. So what we do here is we split the records on the basis of an attribute test that optimizes certain condition, right? So we will see that in detail. So first we need to determine how to split the records, right? So what it tries to do is it tries to split your records. So suppose refund is no, right? Then all the records which have yes as refund will not be considered, will be excluded. So that is how it partitions the data set, right, on the basis of a particular feature. Then it will be again filtered out. If it is not even single and divorced, then all those from the remaining, all those which have single and divorced will be removed. I mean will be not considered. Then so on the basis of that it splits those records, right? Splitting. So there are two issues like how to split the records, how to specify the attribute test condition. How do we come to know that first of all we need to check for refund, not for tax income, right? What will be the root node? What will be the node after that? What will be the node after that? How do we decide on that, right? Similarly, how to determine the best split? That what is the best split? And also important is how when to stop splitting, because it will keep on splitting and splitting and splitting. Do we have some ending condition? So how to specify the attribute test condition? That is based on the concept of purity, right? So we will choose the attribute that leads to the greatest increase in purity, right? So by purity we mean that purity in terms of class labels, right? So we can see that first when we were at refund, we couldn't reach at any conclusion. See, if it is yes, then it is if refund is yes, then we will be predicting it as no. But if it is no, then it is impure, right? Then it can be yes and no both. So we have again split that using some attribute, that is marital status. Then we see that okay, again it is impure. Then the model again splits it on the basis of single, divorced, and married. Married, it is again pure, so we stop the splitting there, right? But in case of single, divorced, we see that okay, it is again impure, and we again need to split it. So we will keep splitting it until it is pure, right? Or until we reach a certain depth. So depends. So splitting depends on attribute types. Like if it is nominal, binomial, ordinal, and continuous, we have seen those attribute types, right? By nominal, we mean that just categorical variable is there, like marital status, single or divorced. So refund, yes or no. So these are nominal. Ordinal, if there is some order associated with them. Continuous, if there are values, continuous values. So if there are continuous values, then we split on the basis of some range, right? See, if it is in this range from this to this, then we will go to the left, else we will go to the right. So depends on number of ways to split, two-way split, multi-way split, right? So multi-way split, we can see that suppose car type is the attribute, then family, sports, luxuries, these can be the multiple splits. Similarly, binary split, we try to divide into two types. So splitting based on continuous attributes, there are two ways. Discretization, by discretization, we try to form from the continuous attributes, we try to form a categorical attribute. So how do we do that? We at the beginning only, we try to make some ranges, make some buckets. Like if a value is 12.5, if some value is 30.2, then we will make buckets like 10 to 20 will come in, 12.5 will come in 10 to 20, 30.4 will come in 30 to 40. So that way we will have those categories, that those classes, and we will be using the splitting there. For binary decision, also we can do similarly. Then there is, yeah. So how to define which test condition is best? Like we can see that on cars we have yes, no. On the basis of yes, we have for class 0, for the class 0 we have 6, class 1 we have 4, right? Class 0, class 1 are the classes we are trying to predict. Understood? Then for class 0, similarly in case of no, we have for class 0 4, for class 1 6. Similarly for car type, we find that for class 0 we have 1, C1 we have 3. For sports we have C0 as 8, C1 as 0. Similarly for others. But we want to identify which test condition is best, because if a test condition is best, we will put it at top, and then we will go recursively, we will make the decision tree. So how will we identify which test condition is best? So to determine the best split, we will identify nodes with the homogeneous class distribution. So by homogeneous, we mean that there should be low degree of impurity. That is the impurity, that is it should be pure. Like here we can see that if it is 5 for both, then we can't decide to go left or to go right. But if it is 9 for class 0 and 1 for class 1, then we know that okay, we can go to the class 0, we can predict it as class 0, right? Here is the low degree of impurity. But this is vague, we need to have some concrete metric for that, right? So there are these measures, there are these metrics: entropy, Gini index, and misclassification error. So entropy and Gini index are the most used measures. Let us understand entropy. So entropy, you might have seen, entropy is like the core of machine learning algorithms. Entropy is like the core of machine learning algorithms. If you can find a parallel, you can see that this is similar to the cross entropy, log cross entropy function we saw in the logistic regression cost function, right? There it was like minus minus log pi and then sigma, yeah, somewhat like that it was there. Log true value minus true value, log predicted value minus true value, log predicted value, and the sum of all that. So that was somewhat, this pattern was only there. So entropy is p this only, but in this context, entropy, here how do we calculate that? So here we calculate that for two classes, like suppose p1 is the fraction of positive examples in S, right? So in the data set, for a particular partition S, the entropy will be like how many of those are positive will be the P1. Similarly, how many of those are negative will represent the P2. So if all examples are in one category, entropy will be 0, right? That is the ideal case. If all examples are in one category, then entropy will be 0. We will having absolutely pure, because it is a measure of entropy, measure of impurity. So if it is 0, then it will be pure, right? So if all examples are in one category, then entropy will be 0. If examples are equally mixed, right? P1 is also 0.5, P2 is also 0.5, then entropy is maximum, that is 1. For multiple class, we similarly just do the sigma for all the all the classes, right? So here we can see the plot for binary classification, that it is minimum at 0 and maximum at 1. So so this is the plot. Then information gain is also a very uh, important measure of impurity. So the information gain of an attribute F is expected reduction in entropy resulting from splitting on this feature. So basically what we are trying to get is how much entropy, how much impurity we can reduce, right? You can see in this example that we will go in that particular direction which optimizes a certain criterion, that is, which optimizes the impurity, that is, which reduces the impurity. So the feature which reduces the attribute which reduces the which reduces the impurity to a greater extent will be preferred. So that is how decision tree is built, right? So so for that, information gain also comes into picture. So what we do here is we try to calculate the uh, reduction in entropy. So here we were minimizing the entropy, right? Here also we are minimizing the entropy, but we are maximizing the gain. Like how much entropy gain, how much information gain we are getting. So the maximum information gain is considered here, right? So this is the formula for gain, that is based on that attribute we will be calculating. Suppose we have already entropy is at S we have calculated. On the basis of some feature F, we are evaluating. Like there are for this example, there are we have a split it till refund. Now we have these all those features like marital status and tax income. Now we need to choose between the two. So we'll be calculating this for the entropy case. We'll be calculating this marital status only, entropy for marital status and entropy for tax income. So because we get the minimum lesser entropy for lesser impurity for marital status, we will consider it first, right? And then we will be again calculating the entropy. But in case of information gain, we will be calculating the gain. So earlier we have some entropy, we will be calculating the information gain on both marital status and tax income. So the for the case where we get information gain larger, we will be considering that first. So marital status will be considered first. So that is how the both approaches work, right? I think, yeah. That is how the both approaches work. Then decision boundary comes into play. So I think we have discussed decision boundary in other approaches also. Let me show you the decision boundary for logistic regression. So in the code when we did that, and in the clustering also, we saw the we saw the decision boundary for we saw the decision boundary for clustering also. So the decision boundary, what it tries to do is it tries to divide the data set into two. So we logistic regression we try to learn this line only, this decision boundary only, so as to identify if a particular value is on that side, then it belongs to some class. If it is on this side, then it belongs to some class. So that is the concept of decision boundary, right? So how does the decision boundary work in case of in case of decision trees, right? So in decision trees we have horizontal decision boundaries. Why so? Because we are considering one attribute at a time, one uh, one attribute at a time, that is one particular variable at a time. So if you see that y equals x is less than 0.43, right? So x equal 0.43 will be your one. So x equals 0.43 will be one of the decision boundaries which will lie here, right? Correct me if I'm sorry. X equals 0.43 will be lying here, right? So this is the decision boundary you will be first creating. So that is a visualization of how this algorithm partitions the data set. So x equals 0.43 will partition the data set the first at this level 0. We can say that x equals 0.43 partition the data set into these two halves, right? This half and this half. But here it is again impure. We can't identify because here also red and blue are there. Here also red and blue are there. Then on the basis of yes, that if it is less than 0.43, if it is less than 0.43, then we will be lying in the left part. If it is greater than 0.43, then we will be lying on the right part. So if it is less than 0.43, then we divide it again, we partition it again on the basis of whether y is equal to 0.47 or not. So y equals 0.47 would be this line, right? So then it divides this section into two parts, right? Here in this section we are dividing it into two parts, and now it is pure. Now there is not much impurity. Now we can see that okay, we are clear now that okay, these many are red, these many are blue. So now we are pure here, right? In the mathematical concept also you can see that blue are 4, red are 0. So the impurity is at 0 here, right? Similarly here also impurity is at 0. We will stop the algorithm splitting here. Then for the no case, right, that is in the right side of it, we are splitting it on the basis of y equals 0.33. So if it is less than 0.33, it will lie below it. If it is greater than 0.33, it will lie above it. Here also we are we have split it properly. So this is how decision boundary works. This is how the algorithm internally works and divides our classification data set into halves, right, into partitions. So border between two neighboring regions of different classes is known as decision boundaries. In decision boundary segments are always parallel to attribute axis because test condition involves one attribute at a time. If someone has any doubt in decision boundary or anything till now, can ask, are free to ask, right? So so strengths involve that can generate understandable rules, right? This is how like our brain works, right? We are trying to emulating the decisions we make in our life also, right? So suppose we have a few interviews in line, right? So we will be planning something like, if this interview clears, yes or no. If this interview clears, then I will be thinking about this thing. If this interview clears, then I will be having some offer. If I have some offer, then I will decide on this particular thing. Similarly, then on the other case, if this interview does not clear, then I will look for other opportunities. If I have those other opportunities, then I will apply there and get some. So that is how our decision making works. So we are trying to emulate that only using this. So can generate understandable rules, right? Perform classification without much computation. You can see that in logistic regression, there was a lot of computation, but here only we need to calculate these entropy and all, and we are done with it. And just some comparisons. So can handle continuous and categorical variables both, right? Provides a clear indication of which fields are most important for prediction, right? Because if a particular feature comes at top, then it implies that okay, this particular feature is most important. So that way it gives some explainability to the model also, right? So these days we are trying to make ML models as explainable as possible. There is itself a field of study known as interpretable machine learning, which implies that how we can make these models more explainable. So decision tree is not, in a sense, not a black box. It is at a much greater level, quite an explainable and interpretable model, right? So it gives explainability. So for weakness, not suitable for prediction of continuous attribute because there we are trying to divide it into buckets, and due to that there might be some discrepancies or not nice models, but we use it for regression as well, cart. Then perform poorly with many class and small data, because if you have a small data and many classes, then it will make many partitions, right? It will make many partitions and it will overfit. It will try to go to the last depth of the data, and then you won't be, because once it overfits, it won't be generalized enough to work on new data or different kind of data, right? Because it will basically rote learn everything you have given to it. So that is there. Then computationally expensive to train, in the sense that at each node, each candidate splitting field must be sorted before its best split can be found. Combination of fields are used. So pruning algorithms can be also expensive because pruning comes into play when overfitting comes into play. So suppose your dysentery overfits. That is, it goes to the last depth, but you don't want that. You don't want it to overfit. So you'll be doing some pruning. By pruning, we mean that you will cut it at a particular depth, right? And then on the basis of voting, you will decide, okay, we will we will take this as this class, right? So there comes the pruning algorithms. So CART is the most popular algorithm for classification and regression tree, known as classification and regression tree. So there, it is similar to dysentery only. I mean, it is dysentery only, but with the small changes that for classification, Gini index is used as an impurity measure. So Gini index has this formula that let me show you the formula for Gini index. Gini index. So Gini index is 1 minus sigma pj square. That is for the particular class, what is the probability? And we subtract that from 1. Right? So Gini index is considered there. Misclassification error is also being used, but not that widely used. So misclassification error is also there. Right? So you can see all those formula on net, and but yeah, we don't need to calculate all of that. So here we can see that for classification tree, Gini index is used as an impurity measure. For regression trees, CART uses the following classification criteria function, which is also known as equal variances. So here, number of number of examples in left, which is NL, and variance for the left examples. Similarly, number of examples is in right and variance for the right examples, and then NL plus NR. So this is this criteria function is used for that. Then yeah, this is all for decision trees. Right, I think yeah, this is how we calculate the Gini index and misclassification error. No problem. No, yeah. So maximum, yeah, misclassification error is maximum 1 minus 1 divided by NC. So you can see that formula. 1 minus maximum of pi by t, that is the misclassification error, right? So that is one thing. Yeah, so these are just some impurity metrics, and the algorithm is always the same as we saw intuitively and mathematically. Now let's look at the coding part of it. So I have written here a lot of code. You don't need to write so much of it. I am doing it because we want to visualize it, but you can simply do decision tree using sklearn, decision tree classifier, and decision tree regressor. So in sklearn decision tree, you can import sklearn decision tree classifier and apply that on your C here. From sklearn.datasets on the iris dataset, from sklearn.tree, import decision tree classifier, and you can simply build this classifier, and then on that you can predict it, right? So that is not an issue at all. Similarly, for decision tree regressor also you can do so. So, but to get it in an intuitive manner, I have these visualizations. So for iris dataset, let me show you the yeah, we have seen that, right? At each depth. So first it divides at this depth. Here it is pure, here it is impure, then here it again divides it at depth equals 1. So here it is again a bit impure. Then to make it more pure, it divides it at depth equals 2. But you can see that green is still there. So it's not that pure, but we have stopped it here because we don't want it to overfit, right? So decision tree are very prone to overfit. Right. So if you, but it is also significantly uh, like significantly uh, like it significantly depends on the small changes in data set. So for example, uh, same data, but if you because the card training algorithm is quite stochastic. By stochastic we mean that it is based on some random values which might change with time. So if you set a random state, so random state is somewhat like a seed only. By that you define, okay, every time the prediction should be similar, the data set should be similarly partitioned. But if you change the random state to something else, then it will be tweaked, and now you can see that at depth equal 0 it is dividing like this, at depth equal 1 it is dividing like this. So here also we can see that, okay, it has divided quite finely, but the green are more here, so it is a bit less pure, right? So that is there. Then here we have defined the uh, maximum depth as something, right? That is because we don't want it to that is because we don't want it to overfit. Maximum depth is 2, right? So it, after depth equals 2, does not further divide it. But if we divide it, but if we don't give it the depth, then it will try to overfit it. You can, as you can see it here, right? For the data set here, when we are using make moons, we are creating this data set. So here it will try to overfit it. It will create all those boundaries and try to fit it absolutely correct as possible. So yeah, so which is not actually desirable, because then for the test data set it won't perform well. So the desirable thing is yeah, here it is much better, right? Then sensitivity to rotation plot. So these are some. So if you, yeah, if you do some rotation on the data set, then there will be some changes also. So dysenteries, the most common problem with dysenteries uh, is with the overfitting, and that you can deal with by defining some ending condition like maximum depth, or you can do so by using some uh, ensemble technique. We will come to that in detail. But now let's look at regression trees. So dysentery regressor you can simply import from sklearn, and then here we are seeing that how so suppose we have this polynomial, like you can see that y square equals minus 4x, something like that is the uh, like this is a parabolic function, right? So we are trying to predict that using regression. So ideally, uh, yeah, so ideally if we do it using polynomial regression, our line would be like this, right? But here we are using dysentery. So at depth equals 0, it divided this into this. Then at depth equals 1, it divided this into this. Then at depth equals, so just at two depths, we are dividing it in this way. And then it takes averages of those values we get, and then it predicts that. But yeah, as we have earlier said also, it is not that much useful for regression, but we use for regression also. So if you don't give the maximum depth, here we must have given some maximum depth at S2, S3, right? So when depth equals 2, we can see that it is not predicting that one. Then at depth equals 3, it is still somewhat close to what we want, right? At depth, if you don't give any depth, then you can see, right, it tries to predict each point, right? Each point it is trying to go. Then you can also minimum samples leaf also can be given to yeah, to basically get the best results and avoid overfitting. So this is somewhat like which you would, I mean, like because here it fits the parabolic function, right? Yeah, yeah. Then grid search is one of the algorithms by which we try to optimize, I mean fine tune our model using, we try to find the optimal values for the parameters, right? Because while experimentation putting those values again and again and again can be tedious. So what we do is, what grid search do is, uh, it in this range of 2 to 100, it will put these maximum leaf nodes. In this range of 2 3 5, it will put this minimum sample splits, and with these combinations it will try to apply these models with cross validation as 3, and it will keep on applying these models. And once it gets the optimal C fitting three folds for each of the 294 candidates, totaling 882 fits. So 882 models will be fitted on this, and the one which has the most highest accuracy will be returned. Uh, Values will be returned. So that is, maximum leaf node should be 17 and random state should be 42. So that way, when we use that, we get the maximum accuracy as 0.865. Right. So that is what we understand with decision trees. So if decision trees are clear till now with mathematics, intuition, and coding, then we are good to go with random forests. So are you clear till now with decision trees? Hello?
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, I think it is quite bit fast, so we need to go through once again.
Yeah,
But
I
you can
understand.
continue, sir.
Okay. Intuitively, if you have any doubt, you can ask that. Coding part, you can look into that or other thing. But intuitively, if you have any doubt, I can clear that out. Yeah, feel free to ask. Okay, no
So
problem.
I think brief overview we have got. Like you can continue.
Okay, no problem, no problem, no problem. So, yeah, as we have seen that decision trees are prone to overfit, right? So, to deal with that, or to deal with that, what we can do is, as we have seen, we can get the minimum number of leaves. We can set the minimum number of leaves. We can use grid search to find the optimal accuracy, but optimal accuracy again might imply overfitting also. So to deal with that, another thing we can do is, yeah, we can do pruning also. Like we can stop it at a particular depth, right? There are other ways also, but another thing we can do is, which we can do it with almost all the algorithms, all the machine learning algorithms, which is ensemble learning, right? So ensemble learning basically implies that instead of just training one model and believing on that and using that, we try to train multiple models, right? And on the basis of that, we try to get the value. So there are two approaches in ensemble learning, which is bagging and boosting. Bagging we can go into detail, I mean, and let you know, but boosting is quite algorithmic and yeah, requires, but in both of the cases, yeah. So let's go with bagging first. So bagging implies like, bagging is short form for bootstrapping and aggregating. So so that implies like, for each subset of data, we will be uh, we will be we will be generating weak classifier models or weak regressive models or weak machine learning models, right? Because if data is less, then models will be weak only. That is, the accuracy will not be high. Once you have those models, then you aggregate their results, right? Then you aggregate their results. So, for example, in case of classification, you have three models, right? So you have created those three models and you apply the test data on them, and you will get three values now, three classes. So, for example, for two you get zero, for one you get one. So, on the basis of voting, you can have voting directly or you can have weighted voting as well. On the basis of voting, you will get, okay, there are two for zeros, so we will classify it as zero. So that is bagging. Similarly, for regression, you can do averaging, weighted averaging, or simple averaging to get the result. So from the concept of bagging and ensemble learning comes random forest. So what random forest does is, it will here, if we go in Scratch, it will create thousand subsets of training set, each containing thousand instances selected randomly, right? So then on the basis of that, those thousand thousand subsets, 1,000 models will be created, and from that we will be evaluate these predictions. And once you average on those values, on those classes, once you use some voting technique, then those results are much better as compared to just a simple model, because that way we are trying to randomize our choosing our model and all, right? So this is going scratch, but sklearn also provides the random forest library. Let's look into that. So there are like random forest classifier from sklearn.ensemble. Import random forest classifier, you can use that. And here we are putting number of estimators as 500. That is 500 models estimators will be created with maximum leaf nodes as 16, random state as 42. So that way, and on the basis of that you will predict your value. So here you will get better understanding of it. So here you can see that these many decision boundaries are there, right? So this is one way to go with random forests. Boosting is also like, if I could give you an overview of boosting, that would be better. But
Like intuitively, if we say like random forest is an extended version of decision tree.
yeah, you can say so. Because decision tree is just one tree. Random forest is like collection of trees.
Okay.
Yeah. So let me go through it in a conceptual manner. So random forest is a supervised algorithm basically because it is based on decision tree. It is an ensemble of decision trees, right? So ensemble means collection. So most of the time trained with the bagging method, right? Bagging, I have just told that we create subsets of dataset randomly, and on that we train multiple weak learners, weak models, and then we use those predictions from that using some voting or aggregation method to get the final results, right? So this is the pseudocode. So how it works is, let's first look into how each decision tree is created, right? So let's look into the inner loop first. So in the inner loop, for how one tree is created. So one tree is created. Suppose we have defined maximum depth as, or maximum number of nodes as I. So repeat until I number of nodes has been reached. So what we do is randomly select k features from total m features, right? So suppose there are 10 features, we will be randomly selected k we can define as 2 or 3, right? So we will be splitting on both ways. We will be splitting on features, and we will be splitting on dataset also, I think. So features, so randomly selected k features. So features on the basis of like two features we will be taking, right? At a time, two features we will be taking. So suppose you have 10 features. So two features we will be taking to create decision tree. So among k features, calculate the node D using the best split point. Again, we will be using the decision tree, and we will be on those two features itself. We will be creating the decision tree, right? So that will be a small decision tree only. Then split the node into daughter nodes using the best split, and we will be get that decision tree. So we will do it till the, so we will repeat it n number of times to get n number of decision trees. So suppose our n is 100, so we will have 100 decision trees. And once we have those 100 decision trees, then we have that random forest, and we will be predicting that using some aggregation technique. Like you can use for classification, you can use voting, you can use weighted voting. For regression, you can use averaging, you can use weighted averaging, right? Similarly, yeah, for prediction, take the test features and use the rules for each randomly created decision tree to predict the outcome and restores the predicted outcome. Calculate the vote. So this is voting only, right? So yeah. Now we are done with random forest. If you have any doubt regarding intuitively or mathematically, you can ask. Hello. Hello.
Yes, sir. So
Yeah.
you can continue.
Okay. So I wish. I mean, let me see. See, I have planned till here only, and that is the end of our course. Yeah, sure, I will. So, till now we have covered all of these: introduction to data science, installing Python, JPython notebook, Python data types. See, I wanted to tell you about ensemble learning as well, but it will take like one class more, and that is beyond the scope of this. But we have discussed bagging, boosting. I don't want you to just give an overview and make it more confusing. So I will not be telling that because that is an in-depth concept. Right. So whatever we have planned, we have cleared that, and we have covered even more than that also. That is not a problem. So introduction to data science, installing Python, JPython notebook, Python data types and conditional statements, Python functions and exception handling, NumPy, Pandas, sklearn, EDA, supervised and unsupervised learning, classification, regression, clustering, decision tree, random forest, bagging we have seen, introduction to NLP is done. We have done real world mini project as well, that is sentimental analysis, and iris dataset we have done. So, so now we are done with the whole course.